The afternoon sun was sharp, slicing through the quiet of a small American suburb. A little boy stood trembling on the cracked sidewalk, clutching a worn-out teddy bear like it was his only shield against the world. His red hoodie was smudged with dirt, his cheeks wet from tears. Behind him, an old woman sat on the porch steps, her floral dress torn, her wrinkled face marked by a fresh bruise. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, gasping softly, not from pain but from heartbreak. The screen door slammed open. A tall man with cold eyes and a beer bottle in his hand leaned against the frame. His white tank top was stained, his voice rough with arrogance. "Get back inside, Ma," he growled. "You made me do this." And then it came. The low, thundering rumble of motorcycles approaching from down the street. Chrome caught the light like lightning. Within seconds, half a dozen bikers rolled up and stopped right in front of the house. Their leader, a tattooed man with a heavy beard and black leather vest, shut off his engine and looked straight at the boy. "Who did this to her, kid?" he asked quietly. The boy hesitated and pointed toward the porch. He hit my grandma." The street fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. If this moment touched your heart, don't scroll away. Take a second to like, comment, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes, because sometimes it takes strangers to remind us what true strength really means. The boy's name was Eli, only 7 years old, but that day he stood taller than any man in the world. His grandmother, Martha, had raised him since his mother passed. She was the kind of woman who still believed kindness could fix anything. Even her son, Rick, the man now standing in that doorway. Rick hadn't always been cruel. Years ago he was a loving father, a man who worked construction and laughed easily. But after losing his wife to illness, the bottle became his only companion. The more he drank, the less he recognized the boy, who looked just like her, and the mother who reminded him of his failures. That afternoon, when Martha tried to stop him from taking Eli's last few dollars, something inside him snapped. He raised his hand. She didn't even flinch. She just whispered, "Rick, please don't," before his palm met her face. Eli had run outside, barefoot, screaming for help. That's when he heard the roar, the motorcycles. The bikers called themselves the Iron Angels. To outsiders they looked rough, leather, tattoos, scars, but their reputation in the small town was something else. They protected people who couldn't protect themselves. Their leader, Hawk, was a man who knew what regret felt like. Years ago he'd hit rock bottom too, and when he saw that bruised grandmother and crying child, something deep in him stirred, a memory he'd spent years trying to forget. Hawk knelt down so he could meet Eli's eyes. "You did good, son. You stayed with her. You didn't run." Eli sniffled. He said he didn't mean it, but he always says that. Hawk looked at the porch. Rick's hand tightened on the beer bottle. "This ain't your business, biker," he barked. "Get lost before I call the cops." Hawk stood, his shadow stretching across the concrete. When a man hits an old woman, his own mother, it becomes everyone's business. The other bikers dismounted, forming a silent wall of leather and steel. Their faces were calm, but their eyes burned. Rick laughed nervously. "What are you gonna do, beat me up?" "No," Hawk said softly. "We're gonna make you look in the mirror." Martha tried to speak, her voice shaking. "Please, don't hurt him. He's my son. He's just lost." Hawk turned toward her. "Ma'am, we don't fix lost men by breaking them. We fix them by showing them what they've broken." He motioned to Eli. The boy hesitated, then walked toward his grandmother, still holding his teddy bear. He climbed onto her lap and hugged her carefully, his small hand brushing the bruise on her cheek. Rick watched. For the first time his smirk faltered. Something inside him, a faint, buried memory, flickered to life. His mother had held him the same way once, years ago, after his father left. Back then her hands were strong. Now they trembled, the silence stretched. Then, without a word, Rick dropped the bottle. It shattered on the steps. He sank down beside the doorway, his face buried in his hands. "I don't know how to stop," he whispered. Hawk stepped forward, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You start by saying sorry, and you finish by never doing it again." Rick looked up, tears cutting through the grime on his face. He turned to Martha. "I'm sorry, Ma. I swear, I'll get help." Martha's frail hand reached out, trembling but steady enough to rest on his arm. "Then come home, son. Come home and start over." The bikers stood silently. They weren't there to punish. They were there to witness. When Hawk finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "You got brothers now, Rick. We don't drink to forget. We ride to forgive." Rick nodded, unable to speak. Transformation over the next few weeks, things began to change. Rick checked himself into rehab. Hawk and the Iron Angels visited every few days, fixing Martha's porch, mowing her lawn, and bringing groceries. Eli would run outside every time he heard the motorcycles, waving his little teddy bear in excitement. One evening, as the sun set gold across the neighborhood, Hawk stopped by one last time. Rick, now sober, stood beside his mother, helping her water the garden. His face was leaner, his eyes clearer. "I don't know how to thank you," Rick said quietly. Hawk smiled. "Just keep her safe, that's thanks enough." As the bikers roared away, Eli waved, shouting, "Bye, Mr. Hawk." Hawk smiled in the mirror as the house grew smaller in the distance. He had seen too many men lost to their demons, but this time, one had found his way back. If this story reminded you that everyone deserves a second chance, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes, because kindness shared is kindness multiplied. Months later, the neighborhood gathered for the annual fall fair. Martha sat in her wheelchair, laughing as Eli won a small prize at the ring toss, a shiny toy motorcycle. Rick pushed her chair, smiling shyly when he spotted Hawk and his crew across the lot. He walked up, extended his hand. "You were right, one sorry wasn't enough, but I'm working on 1,000 more." Hawk shook his hand firmly. "That's what makes you a real man." The engines started again, their thunder rolling into the horizon. Martha looked at her son, sober, steady, whole again, and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Eli climbed onto his father's shoulders, waving his toy motorcycle high into the air as they watched the bikers disappear down the road. Because sometimes, the strongest heroes wear leather instead of capes, and the loudest sound of hope is the rumble of forgiveness. Strength isn't measured by the fists you raise, but by the hearts you choose to protect.